Our adventure in ancient Egypt continues here on Doodling with Purpose, YouTube's only week-by-week guide to learning ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. And we are now at the point that you're getting homework every week because, hey, that's the best way to learn, right? To actually be involved and not just have it be a passive experience. So let's take a look at the sheet from last week, hopefully spelling error free, unlike I've done a few times, which does not help you guys learn when I screw up. Anyway, so the idea is that you are writing this out on your own and taking all the time you need to translate. So let's do that. All right, jumping in. First, we are going to split up our sentence into words, noting where the determinatives are as part of our clue to do this. All right, so our first word is foot, vulture, foot, B, an A or A, B, which might be a way to write Bob. Get it? Like the name Bob? Trying to go with simple names here. Bob. So if you don't recognize it, it's probably a noun. All right, now we see a word from last week that we learned, owl, mouth, plan, mer, per, M-R, and then P-R, overseer of the estate. Now we have mer, the ho and the mouth sign, and of course having the second R after an MR is your helper consonant. So this means loves or beloved. And again, we'll look at context clues. Now we have the Pinteal tailed duck, which is sa, followed by a determinative of a man. And you may recall this means son. So it would be daughter if it had a T, and a determinative of a woman. Then we have the horned viper, which is F, meaning his or he or him. So again, we'll figure out which version of that would apply. Then we have hum netter, or it looks like netter hum, which, if you recall from last week, means God person, the netter meaning God and hum meaning person. And this is, again, is a honorific transposition because netter is one of those letters. It's a holy letter, like SW, and it appears first but read afterwards. So it's hum netter, not netter hum. Then we have just an N, which is the water sign, which is of, followed by Ra, which is the sun. So the whole thing is going to read, Bob, overseer of the estate, loves, son, his, or his son, priest of Ra. See, Bob, who is the butler in the household, is really proud of his son because his son is a priest of Ra. And that's, a pretty big thing in ancient Egypt because Ra was kind of like, the head deity, like major god. So yeah, I'd be proud too if my son was a priest of Ra. Although I don't have a son, I have a daughter. And, well, I guess some daughters could be pharaoh, not priests. What can I say? It was a patriarchal society, and it was, a long time ago. So there you go. Use context clues to figure out which version. All right, so looking at this word, which we just used in the sentence, merper, the owl, the R, and the house plan, per, overseer of the house, or overseer of the estate, etc., etc. Essentially a butler, if you will. Now, there's a pun. We talked about how the R, because it's the mouth sign, because the orders come from this person. Well, one of the weird exceptions is that the letter nus, which is the ox tongue, is sometimes used in place of the owl and the mouth. But it's still pronounced mer-per, not nus-per, because the tongue is in the mouth, even though it's an ox tongue. It's just one of those fun things about ancient Egyptian, and it's one of those exceptions, like, I after E, except after C, except in, neighbor and way, etc. So if you see the ox tongue with per, it's still pronounced mer-per, and it still means overseer of the house, with the tongue being that pun for things coming from the mouth. All right, another one to relook at is king. And as I mentioned, the SW sound is honorific transposition, so it comes first but said last. So it's nuswa, and usually, well, this means king, but there's another way of writing king, which is, again, with the SW glyph of the root, but followed by the bird, the B, which is biti. And when you see it written like this, it means king of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, the two combined kingdoms. In the Old Kingdom, they were two different kingdoms, but then they became one, where the Nile Valley and the Delta both became the same kingdom. So you would see Nuswabiti, which means king of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, the united, well, actually Kemet was what they called it, not Egypt. Their word for their own country was Kemet. All right, now let's talk about cartouches. You probably recognize these, right? You see them all over the place in Egyptology. And we talked a little bit about this in the very beginning of Doodling with Purpose. So here we have a cartouche of a famous king. And you'll see these written sideways, you'll see these written vertically, but essentially anytime you see hieroglyphs with a circle around it like that, where you're making a cartouche, you are spelling the name of a king or a mayor or someone very, very important. In fact, it can be fun to write your own name in a cartouche and figure out how to do it. Pause here and figure out these three names. All right, so when Napoleon was invading Egypt in 1790s, besides finding the Rosetta Stone, cartouches were named cartouches because they looked like French bullets. This is a French bullet from Napoleonic times, and the French word for bullet is cartouche or cartridge. So that's where they come from. All right, so let's go back to this particular cartouche, or cartridge in French. So here we have another honorific transposition. Ra is a letter that's written first but pronounced last. So this is going to be Huperkare. Huperkare. So the scarab and the arms in the air. So it is Hiperkare, or would be how you might write it in English as far as a pharaoh. This is one of the pharaohs of the Second Kingdom, Hiperkare, or Carperkara, excuse me. So Ra, the sun, is put first but moved to the end. Here's a few different words that are used to describe a king, and these are very important ones because they come up all the time in stela and inscription, because there are certain common ways that kings and pharaohs and important people that are worth monuments have. So the first we have Nefer-Neter, and that means perfect God. And again, Neter written first but said after. Then Nibtu, which is Lord of the Two Lands. Remember, plural always has a W at the end, even if you don't write it. And you see two of Tua, which is land. So Neb, meaning Lord, because if Nib, the basket without a handle, comes first, it means Lord. The next one is an Ankh, followed by the viper, T, and the water sign, which is Ankhdit, and this means living enduringly. You can remember living because Ankh means to live. Likewise, at the top right there, we have Dai Ankh. And Dai, we remember, is the verb for give, and Ankh meaning life, so this means giver of life. You'll notice, words like of don't actually appear. Then under that, we have Dit Rana. Oh, I skipped the one in the middle. That's Ra Mi, which is like Ra. Dit Rana is enduring and repeating forever and ever. And the one right above it that I forgot to write is Ra Mi, or actually Mi Ra, because again, honorific transposition, like Ra. You might say the king is like Ra. And then finally, another way that kings are described is based on their year. So this is the word for year, and you may remember this from when we did numbers. It's Renip-tsp. So that first glyph, you recall, is Renip, and then you have T, the loaf, and then Sp, which is the field. This means regional year. All right, so we're going to put together everything we just learned. Here is your homework for next week. Pause here and write this one out and translate it on your own and see how you could do. And actually go back and see if you could translate those cartouches too that I noted right before the Napoleon. Those are English-American names, so see if you could figure out what those names are and pause screen on that too. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope these lessons are helpful. Any feedback is always welcome. Let me know what you think, ways I can improve, questions you have, anything you like. And speaking of liking, like this, subscribe, ring a bell, share the video. It all helps this channel because it's the whole YouTube algorithm thing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week for more Doodling with Purpose.